The work order is still pinned to the corkboard by our register. 4 years of steam and bacon grease have curled the corners of it, and if you didn't know better, you'd think it was just paperwork. 4 lines, 2 different handwritings fighting for space in the margins, most of it crossed out now. Regulars ask about it sometimes. I tell them it's a permit. That's not exactly a lie. It's just not the whole truth, and most of my best stories about Sarah Reyes start that way. I should go back to the beginning, though. The spring her grandmother died, and the bid came across my desk like nothing in my life was about to change. I'm Eli Hartwell. I run Hartwell & Son out of Sister Bay, Door County, Wisconsin, which is a fancier name than the operation deserves. Since the son part is just me and the Hartwell part is my dad, who hasn't swung a hammer since his stroke 9 years ago. I took the business over the same spring Sarah left for the University of Chicago, and for a long time I told people that was just how the timing worked out. Dad needed somebody. I was already local. It made sense. It made sense the way a lot of things make sense right up until you're 40 and still living in the house you grew up fixing. Sarah and I started when we were 16. She worked the counter at her grandmother Lorraine's diner, the Cherry Stem, on weekends and most of summer, and I came in for pie I didn't need because I liked watching her argue with the register. We were a couple by junior year. We were the kind of couple that small towns get sentimental about porch swing on the diner's back deck, slow dancing in the gravel lot to a truck radio, her grandmother pretending not to watch us through the screen door. Lorraine used to say we wore a groove into that swing like a couple of old people 40 years early. Then came the acceptance letter to Chicago, and 3 months later, my dad's left side stopped working right in the middle of a kitchen remodel, and Sarah and I had one conversation about what that meant for us that neither of us handled well. She said she wasn't going to ask me to choose between her and my father. I said I wasn't asking her to choose between Chicago and me. We were both lying about how much we meant it. We broke up over the phone in August, the kind of breakup where neither person actually says the word breakup, you just stop making plans for September. She built a life down there. Marketing, then brand strategy, then a husband named Mark, who I'd met exactly twice, both times at her grandmother's Christmas open house. Both times feeling like I was being measured against him and losing. I built a business up here. Neither of us came back for the other one. That's the part people leave out when they tell second chance stories for a long time. Nobody chooses anybody. You just keep living your life in the same zip code as your grief. Lorraine died in February, in her sleep, in the apartment above the diner she'd run for 41 years. The whole town came to the funeral, because that's what Door County does, it shows up. I sat 4 rows back and watched Sarah stand at the front in a black coat that was too thin for a Wisconsin winter, and I thought, not for the first time, that I had let something good get away from me without ever really fighting for it. I did not think I'd be the one rebuilding her kitchen 2 months later. Life has a sense of humor about that kind of thing. The Cherry Stem needed real work, a roof that had been patched too many times, wiring from the Carter administration, a walk-in cooler that hadn't held temperature reliably since before I was born. Lorraine's will left the diner to Sarah outright, on the condition, written in Lorraine's own looping hand, that she open it again before she sells it, just to see. Sarah put the renovation out to 3 local bids. Mine came in lowest, because I'd grown up half living in that kitchen and knew exactly what it needed without paying anybody to find out twice. I almost didn't submit it. Marin, my younger sister, who runs the bakery 2 doors down and has never once minded her own business in her life, told me I was an idiot if I didn't. You're going to let Dale's outfit overcharge her by 12 grand because you're scared of a woman you dated in high school, she said. It wasn't just high school. I know exactly how long it was, Eli. I was 12 and you two were unbearable. I submitted the bid. I got the job. And on a cold gray Tuesday in April, I drove up to the back lot of the Cherry Stem with my crew and found Sarah Reyes standing on the porch in jeans and one of her grandmother's old cardigans, holding a clipboard like it was the only thing keeping her upright, and for a second neither of us said anything at all. Hartwell & Son, she said finally, reading off my truck door, was cheaper than repainting it. You run your dad's company now. I run my company. He drinks coffee and tells me I'm doing the joists wrong. That got the smallest crack of a smile out of her, gone almost before I caught it. I didn't know it was you. I picked the lowest bid. I'd like to think that wasn't the only reason. Don't, she said, but not unkindly. Don't do the thing where you're charming. I buried my grandmother 2 months ago, and I am one bad night of sleep away from crying in front of your entire crew. Understood, I said. No charm. I'll save it for the load-bearing wall. She looked at me a long moment, the wind off the bay pulling a piece of hair across her face, and I had the distinct, useless thought that 10 years had only sharpened whatever it was about her that used to wreck me at 16. We should set some ground rules, she said, for the renovation. For all of it. She tapped the clipboard. I need this to be a job, Eli, not a thing where my whole town watches us pick up where we left off because it's a good story. I have a divorce that isn't even final yet. I have a diner I'm not sure I'm even keeping. I don't have room for anything that isn't load-bearing right now. I should have felt that like a closed door. Mostly I felt relieved that she cared enough to draw the line in the first place. Write it down then, I said. I'll sign it like a change order. She did. That night, before the crew came back the next morning, she pinned a sheet of notebook paper to the corkboard by the old register. 4 lines in blue ink. 1. Stay on schedule. 2. Everything itemized, nothing's a favor. 3. We don't talk about before. 4. This ends at the ribbon cutting. I read it standing in the doorway with my coffee, and under Rule 3 I wrote, in my own handwriting, define before. She found it the next morning and, without a word, crossed out my note and wrote beneath it, "You know exactly what I mean." I did. I kept the rules anyway. For a while. We worked through April and into May the way you'd expect me and my crew tearing out the old walk-in, replumbing the kitchen, Sarah repainting the dining room a soft cream because, she said, Grandma always wanted it less yellow and never had the money. And somewhere in the noise of saws and a radio playing classic country, we fell into something that looked a lot like the easiest version of us. She brought coffee out to the crew at 10 without being asked. I started running her grocery errands into my lumber runs because the bridge construction on 42 made her detour 20 minutes out of the way otherwise, and I didn't tell her, I just started doing it, and she figured it out and didn't ask me to stop. Itemize that, I told her once, nodding at a sack of canned tomatoes on her counter. Says here it's a favor. It's a logistics decision, she said. You were already at the store. I was not already at the store. I drove 11 extra minutes to be at the store. Then bill me for the gas. I'm going to bill you for the gas, I said, and didn't. And she knew I wouldn't, and that became its own quiet joke that neither of us put a name to. Her grief came out sideways, in the way grief does for people who are used to running things. She'd be fine sanding a booth, telling stories about Lorraine yelling at fishermen who tracked mud across her floor. And then she'd go quiet over something small, a recipe card in Lorraine's handwriting. A chip in the same coffee mug Lorraine drank from every morning, and her whole face would close like a door somebody'd shut too hard. Her mother called twice a week from Madison asking when she was putting the place on the market and coming home for real. Her Aunt Pat stopped by the job site once just to tell her, in front of me and half my crew, that she was wasting her good years playing diner. I watched Sarah absorb that with a smile so practiced it made my chest hurt. And later, alone in the dining room while she swept up plaster dust, I said, "You don't have to be fine in front of me." She stopped sweeping. Everybody wants something different from me right now. My mom wants me back in Madison. Pat wants me selling. The town wants a story about the granddaughter who saved Lorraine's diner. What do you want? I don't know yet, she said. Nobody's asked me that question in about 8 years. I'm asking. She looked at me for a second too long. Don't, she said again, but her voice had gone soft around the edges, and this time it didn't sound like a rule. It sounded like a request she was making of herself. The porch swing came up in June. It had hung off the back deck since before I was born. Repainted cherry stem red so many times the wood had grown soft underneath it. The same swing we'd worn a groove into as teenagers, while Lorraine pretended not to watch through the screen door. One of the chains had rusted through over the winter and it sat crooked, useless, half off its hooks. It wasn't on the work order. I fixed it anyway, on a Saturday when the crew was off, new chain, sanded and repainted, because some part of me wanted it standing the day the diner reopened, the way it always had. Sarah came around back while I was rehanging it and stopped dead in the gravel. "You didn't itemize that," she said. "Wasn't a job. It's the swing." "Eli, I had the chain in the truck." She walked over slow, like the swing might startle and run if she came at it too fast, and sat down on it for the first time in probably 15 years. It held. I'd made sure it would hold. "Sit down," she said. "Sarah, it's a swing, not a rule violation." "Sit." I sat. It creaked under both our weight the exact same way it used to, and for a long minute neither of us said anything. Just rocked it slow with our feet against the boards, close enough that our shoulders kept almost touching, and then not. "Grandma used to say we'd wear a groove in this thing," she said. She wasn't wrong. I used to think about this swing more than I probably should have, down in Chicago. Mark thought it was strange I cared so much about a piece of porch furniture in a town I never went back to. I didn't say anything about Mark. I'd learned by then that the fastest way to end a real conversation with Sarah was to say his name with any kind of feeling in my voice. "I think about it because it's the only place I ever felt like nothing was being graded," she said instead. "My whole life since has been somebody scoring me. Sales targets, my mother, Mark, even Pat with her little comments. This was just sitting. Nobody keeping score. Nobody's keeping score now," I said, which was almost true. I was keeping score. I'd been keeping score since April, probably longer, and the score was not in my favor, because every week she stayed in town was a week closer to the only thing that scared me, her leaving again, and me not saying anything the second time either. Her hand was on the chain next to mine. I could have closed the distance. I almost did. She must have felt the air change, because she stood up fast, the swing swaying empty between us. "We have Rule 3, she said. "I know. And Rule 4. "I know that too." "Good," she said. But her voice cracked a little on the word, and she went back inside before either of us had to find out what would have happened if she'd stayed sitting. The call from Chicago came in July while I was up on the roof replacing flashing. I wasn't supposed to know about it. She took it out in the gravel lot, pacing, one hand pressed to her forehead. And I could only hear pieces over the wind director of brand. "I appreciate that. I need to think about it," and by the time she hung up I'd already half guessed what it was. Because I'd watched her face do the thing it used to do back when we were 19, and she got into a program down south and didn't know how to tell me yet. She didn't mention it that day, or the next. I didn't ask. That was its own kind of rule, the unspoken fifth one neither of us had written down. Don't make her say it before she's ready. The Cherry Festival was the deadline, the third weekend of August. The town's whole calendar built around it, cherry pie contest in the square, a parade down Highway 42, half of Door County descending on Sister Bay for a long weekend. Lorraine's Diner had done its biggest week of business every single festival for 4 decades. Sarah wanted the doors open for it, ribbon and all, both because it made financial sense and because I think some part of her wanted to prove to her mother and her aunt and maybe herself that this hadn't been a waste of a good year. We were on track until the storm came through the first week of August and took half the new roof flashing with it, plus knocked the walk-in's compressor out for 4 days while we waited on a part from Green Bay. I watched Sarah do the math out loud in the half-finished dining room, voice gone thin and fast the way it did when she was trying not to panic in front of people. If we don't open for the festival, we don't open till next spring. I can't carry this place through a whole winter with no income. We'll make the festival. You don't know that. I know what my crew can do in 9 days if I tell them what's riding on it, I said. I know I'm not going to let Lorraine's Diner miss its first festival in 41 years over a compressor. She looked at me like she wanted to argue and didn't have the energy left to. Why does this matter so much to you? I almost told her the truth right then. I didn't. I said, because you matter to this town, and you don't see it, which was true, and was also a smaller truth standing in front of a bigger one. We made the deadline. 9 straight days, 12-hour shifts. Marin sending over coffee and day-old pastries so the crew wouldn't run on fumes. Sarah scrubbing grout at midnight in an old cherry stem t-shirt with paint in her hair, looking more like herself than I'd seen her look in months. 2 nights before the ribbon cutting, I found out about the job offer the way I should have known I would by accident. The worst way. Her mother called while Sarah was up a ladder hanging the new sign, and Sarah's phone, left on the counter, lit up loud enough that I glanced at it without meaning to. The text underneath the missed call was already on the screen. Mark says, "Congrats on the Chicago offer. Hope you're being smart about this, Sarah. I set a paint can down harder than I meant to." She heard it, looked over from the ladder. "You okay?" "You got the job," I said. Not a question. Her face did something complicated. "Eli, when?" "They offered it in July." "That's 6 weeks you didn't say anything." "Because I didn't know what to say." She climbed down, slow, careful, like the ladder had suddenly become the easiest problem in front of her. "It's a real job, Eli. Real money. A real life I already know how to live. And this isn't? This is a diner that might fail in February and a man I broke up with over the phone 14 years ago," she said, and then looked horrified at herself, like the sentence had escaped before she'd finished deciding whether to let it out. I should have said something. That was the moment I see it now, clear as anything, clearer than I saw it standing right inside it. I had a whole speech available to me, the one I'd been not saying since April, since June on that swing, since probably 2009. Instead, I picked the paint can back up and said, "Itemize the sign install. I'll have it on the invoice by Friday," and walked out to the truck, because some old, stupid, scared part of me had decided that if she was going to leave again, I'd rather be the steady one who didn't ask her to stay than the fool who asked and got told no a second time. I drove home and sat in my driveway for 20 minutes not going inside. Maren called before I'd even cut the engine, because Maren has never in her life let me sit alone with a bad decision. She told her mom, "You and Sarah are just finishing the job." Maren said, "No hello. Your name's all over town tonight, by the way, in case you're wondering how fast Sister Bay gossips. I don't want to talk about it." "Good, because I'm going to talk and you're going to listen." "Did you say anything to her just now?" I told her to itemize the sign. There was a long silence on the line, the kind Maren reserves for my worst decisions. "Eli, what? You did the thing Dad did to Mom for 30 years. The thing where you love somebody so loud on the inside and so quiet on the outside that they have to guess. You're 40 next year. Sarah's about to take a job in Chicago because nobody up here gave her a single real reason to stay. And you had 9 years to learn that lesson and you just failed the test again." I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 in the morning, I got up, sat at my kitchen table, and did something I hadn't let myself do in a decade. I actually thought, on purpose, in full sentences, about what I wanted, instead of what made the least amount of risk for either of us. I wanted Sarah Reyes, not the version of her that fit conveniently around my schedule, not a fling that ended at a ribbon cutting. All of it: the diner, the grief, the mother who didn't approve of either of us, the swing, the whole loud, complicated, unfinished thing. I just hadn't said it out loud one single time in 20 years. The ribbon cutting was a Saturday morning, the square full of festival crowds. Sarah in a green dress with flour still under one fingernail, because she'd been up since 5 doing the first official bake of cherry hand pies in the Cherry Stem's new oven. Her mother stood near the front with her arms crossed in a way that managed to look proud and disapproving at the exact same time. Maren's daughter, my niece Bertie, who'd attached herself to Sarah sometime in July the way 7-year-olds do to anyone who lets them lick the spoon, stood holding one end of the ribbon with a self-importance that made the whole square laugh. Sarah cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. The doors of the Cherry Stem opened for the first time in 6 months, and for about an hour I let myself just watch her work the room she'd grown up in, easy and lit up and exactly where she was supposed to be, and told myself that was probably going to have to be enough. It wasn't enough. Around noon, the crowd thinning, I found her on the back porch by the swing, taking 5 minutes alone before the lunch rush hit. "You should be in there," she said, taking credit. "Half this crowd thinks you're a hero for the roof alone. I came to ask you something." She went still in the way she did when she already half knew what was coming. "Eli, don't say my name like that yet. Let me finish. Because I didn't finish 14 years ago and I've had a long time to think about how badly that went." She didn't say anything. The swing creaked once behind her in the wind. "I let you go to Chicago without ever once asking you to stay," I said. "I told myself it was because I didn't want to be the reason you didn't chase your life." That sounded noble. For about 9 years. Then I watched you come back here grieving and tired and trying to decide between a job in a city that already had you and a diner and a town that's never once told you, out loud, that we wanted you here. And I almost did it again 2 nights ago. I almost let you take that job without saying one true thing. Because some part of me has decided that asking for what I want is the same as guaranteeing I'll lose it. "Eli, I'm not asking you to turn down Chicago," I said, even though every part of me wanted to. "I'm not going to be the reason you stay somewhere small if it's not what you actually want. But I am done letting you walk into a decision thinking nobody up here has anything real on the other side of the scale. I love you. I've loved you since I was 16 years old on this exact swing. And I loved you the whole time you were married to somebody else, which I'm not proud of. And I love you right now. Paint in your hair, about to maybe move to Chicago. And I needed you to know that before you decide anything, not after." She was quiet long enough that I started bracing for the worst kind of quiet. Then she laughed, short and wet, and wiped under one eye with the back of her hand. "You couldn't have said any of that in June? On this actual swing?" I was working up to it. 14 years is a long wind-up. I'm aware. She came and sat next to me, the swing dipping under both of us, the same creak it always had. "I turned the offer down Thursday," she said. I stared at her. "You what?" "I turned it down Thursday night. Before you found out I had it, even. I just didn't know how to tell you. Because I didn't know if I was staying for the diner or staying because I was scared to find out you didn't feel the same thing I did. And I didn't want it to be a guess." She looked at me, eyes bright. "I want it to not be a guess anymore, Eli. I'm tired of finding out how people feel about me by accident. Through a roof or a swing or a text I wasn't supposed to see. It's not a guess," I said. "It hasn't been a guess on my end since I was 16. Then say the rest of it. Out loud. Not the speech version. The real one." So I did. I told her I wanted Sunday dinners in bad winters and an apartment over a diner that smelled like cherry pie at 6 in the morning. I told her I wanted to be on whatever form asks who to call, not because something broke, but because I was already there. She put her hand over mine on the chain, the same spot it had almost happened in June, and this time neither of us pulled back. "Can I kiss you?" she asked, the way she always used to, careful even when she wanted something badly. "Took you long enough," I said, and she did, soft and certain, the porch swing rocking under both of us like it had been waiting 14 years for exactly this. We found the recipe box that night, going through the last of Lorraine's boxes in the apartment upstairs. Tucked behind the pie cards was an old photograph me at 18, Sarah at 17. Sitting on that same swing the summer before everything fell apart, both of us laughing at something neither of us can remember now. On the back, in Lorraine's handwriting, faded but legible, "Don't let this one get away twice." Sarah didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she set the photo face up on the counter, where it's stayed ever since. Propped against the old register beside the work order with its 4 lines, most of them crossed out now. We never did cross out Rule 4. Sarah just added underneath it, the night after the ribbon cutting, in the same blue ink, "Some jobs don't have a finish date." The cherry stem's been open 2 years now. Sarah runs it most days. I still do the maintenance nobody itemizes. And Marin's bakery sends over the morning bread. Bertie's got her own stool at the counter, and opinions about pie crust she did not earn. Her mother still calls twice a week, though these days it's mostly about the wedding. People still ask about the work order on the corkboard. I still tell them it's a permit. It is, in a way, just not for the kitchen.